Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this video I'm going to take a look at the top 12 best decks in Hearthstone at the moment. Now Prince Renathal, the effects of Prince Renathal are now pretty much spread throughout the meta, and it has resulted in I don't know, it's interesting, but on the other hand is it also a little bit dull, the current meta? Well, anyway, what Prince Renathal has done is that we're currently experiencing one of the most slowest metas that Hearthstone has ever had. But it's not really a control meta, it's more of a mid-range meta, and there are very few aggro decks. Only a couple of aggro decks are still trying to do something in this meta, and they are not having a lot of success. We're also starting to see some rise of combo decks. We're talking about decks like Mind Rogue, decks like OTK Warlock, and they are having some moderate success, but on the other hand, it looks like whenever they try to peak up a little bit, then they just get beaten down, because then people start to play a little bit faster decks and then they can't succeed again. We're also still experiencing some inertia, because we talk about decks like Prester Druid, for example. Prester Druid, last time I listed top 10 decks early after Renathal, Prester Druid was number 10. This time Prester Druid does not make it to top 12. Prester Druid is not performing at a level where you should actually be playing Prester Druid, but it's still almost 10% of the meta. So people keep playing some of these decks even though their performance really doesn't warrant that. And that's why also there's a bunch of decks that are like doing well, because they're doing well against Druid. And then, but what if those Druids went away? Would these decks still be part of the top best decks? I don't know, that's still some meta refinement left to do. Another Druid deck, the Celestial Druid, it's even more polarized than the Prester Druid. And Celestial Druid basically only has two good matchups, Prester Druid and Quest Hunter. It doesn't have any other good matchups, it's bad against everything else. Yet Celestial Druid is still doing quite okay overall in the ladder. It's hard to recommend a deck that is barely able to breach 50% win rate, when you can clearly see that, okay, its matchup spread is this bad, and once people stop playing this Prester Druids, then the Celestial Druid is just going down the drain anyway. So in some ways we are seeing the full effect of Prince Renathal. We're seeing a slower meta, more mid-range meta, some control decks, very few aggro decks, combo decks trying to do something but still not quite good enough. And on the other hand, there is still this sort of inertia that keeps people playing stuff like Druid where that should not be played, and that artificially boosts the win rate of some decks and maybe weakens some others. So overall, I do expect some more meta developments to happen, but then again, looking at like top 10 from last week, top 12 from this week, the top 7 in both is exactly the same decks. The order has changed a little bit, their lists have changed a little bit, but they're the 7 same archetypes. In some ways, this is the Prince Renathal meta. And let's take a deeper look into what exactly is this Prince Renathal meta. And coming in at number 12, this is a deck that I really want to feature. It's only slightly above 50%. And yeah, one of these good matchups is that Druid matchup, so okay, maybe it's not here to stay. But Quest Rogue actually looks like a playable deck at the moment. Quest Rogue looks like a deck that can climb the ladder, and that's pretty stunning, because like Quest Rogue is a very linear archetype. There's not a lot of nuance to this deck, but still, Quest Rogue. If you want to play it, if you enjoyed Quest Rogue, you can play it again. Number 11 is the current premium aggro deck, and basically the only aggro deck left in the metagame, and that deck is Murloc Shaman. Murloc Shaman tries to punish all these slow decks like big Spell Mages and Druids. Also, Mech Mages, Mech Paladins, it can punish the other decks that are trying to punish slow decks. But then again, it has its weaknesses, especially against Hunter and against Rogue, and those are pretty bad weaknesses to have in the current meta. So Murloc Shaman, yeah, it's playable, it's had its upsides, but it's not going to be a dominant force. In fact, it's not even the best Shaman deck at the moment, because the Control Murloc Shaman is the best Shaman deck at the moment. Control Murloc Shaman still shares some of the same weaknesses like Quest Hunter, for example. It's weak against Big Spell Mage, which is one of the decks that Murloc Shaman is targeting, but it has upside against some of these more mid-range decks like Beast Hunters and Boat Rogues that Murloc Shaman just doesn't have answers to. And Control Shaman, it has quite a bit of answers. It can freeze some boards and win some games. Number 9 is a deck that returns back to the best decks list after a short period of absence, and that deck is Mech Mage. Yeah, well, you just put your mechs into a deck, and you put your Seafloor Gateway into the deck, and then you have your Mecha Sharks, and cheap Mecha Sharks, and cheap mechs, and pew 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 pew. Flame Wakerish stuff, and what can I say? It works. although it does not work as well as Mech Paladin. Mech Paladin, once again, like whenever there's some little bit slower decks, like right now we have Beast Hunters, we have Quest Hunters. They're not really control decks, but let's say they're kind of like slow mid-range decks. And then Mech Paladin is there, like, oh, you don't have a fast opener, oh, you don't do anything at the start of the game. Well, let me just steadily build my assortment of mechs here and make them big and give them divine shields and then hit you in the face before you're able to do much about it. Obviously, decks that have an actual early game in the current meta, that means Mech Mage and Murloc Shaman, are going to just eat Mech Paladin for breakfast. One of the more surprising things about Prince Renathal has been that it has actually made Quest Priest a deck. Quest Priest was number 7 last week and Quest Priest is number 7 this week. Quest Priest still remains viable, the list is being refined. This list, for example, this list that I'm showing here, there's a couple of competing Quest Priest lists. This one, for 0 cost, this only runs the Desperate Prayer. This does not have the 1 cost Call of the Grave, it does not have the 1 cost Gift of the Naru. Maybe it should have that Gift of the Naru though, I'm actually not sure about cutting that. But Call of the Grave seems like a good choice to cut. Addition of Deep Run Engineer, another 2-drop so that you can actually get your quest started. Because you need a lot of these 2-drops, you're running a Renathal deck, you have 40 cards in the deck, you need a lot of 2-drops, you need a lot of 3-drops so that you can get past that first bit of the quest. And after that you can start to discover more stuff and start to fill your curve so that you can get through the rest of the quest line. But getting through that early quest line is just really essential, and now Quest Priest decks with Renathal are starting to find the correct number of 2-drops and 3-drops to get started with that. The number 6 deck this week is Fel Demon Hunter. Fel Demon Hunter is exactly the same list as 1 week ago. Fel Demon Hunter has not been able to evolve. It's the same as it has been. It's pretty good, but the meta is slowly turning against it, because weaknesses against Beast Hunters, weakness against Quest Hunters. These are the types of archetypes that are rising, and strong against Druid, and Druid is on its way down. So meta has slowly been turning against Fel Demon Hunter, but Fel Demon Hunter still has a lot to give. It's just an overall solid, strong deck. So here it is at number 6. Rogue is also doing well in this meta. Both Rogue, the more tempo-oriented Rogue deck, the one that has a very solid game plan, you know what you're doing, you're not using a lot of random stuff, so you just have a game plan, it's a tempo game plan, you're executing that game plan, trying to kill the opponent before they have room to maneuver enough, and it's a pretty good deck. It's number 5, but right now, in the slow meta, it's not as good as Random Rogue. Because at number 4 we have Thief Rogue. Yes, when the meta is slow enough and you put Jackpot into your deck and you put Swiftway Trickster into your deck and Contraband Stash into your deck and Tess Greymane into your deck, and yeah, that's peak Hearthstone. But coming in at number 3 is even more peak Hearthstone, which is the Big Spell Mage, which is essentially the Rune of the Archmage Mage. Yeah, let's be honest, that's what you do. You have Rune of the Archmage, you have Grey Sage Parrots, you have a Sorceress is making a Rune of the Archmage cost less, and sometimes you use Drakefire Amulet. Okay, it's not a terrible card. Getting those big dragons, especially if you can get them so that they cost 0, yeah, that's cool and everything. But Rune of the Archmage is the card that just wins games. And what's interesting is that Big Spell Mage is like the limit of Prince Renathal. There are Prince Renathal Big Spell Mage lists, and then there are non-Renathal Big Spell Mage lists. And right now it starts to look like the non-Renathal variant is slightly better. They are still very, very close. Last week I featured a Renathal Big Spell Mage. You can play that if you like. Perfectly playable deck. But it starts to look like Mage, unlike Priest, is not a class where Prince Renathal makes that much of a difference in favor of the Mage. On the other hand, who could have guessed that Prince Renathal is actually the card that Hunter has always wanted? We're living in a Hunter meta. But it's not the Hunter meta of your grandfather. No, not at all. This is the Prince Renathal Hunter meta. The Hunter meta where Hunter has 40 health. So okay, even though Hunter doesn't have that great defensive tools, but it has more health. So it's actually able to do these mid-range things because it doesn't die before it gets to do them. And that's why Beast Hunter, currently the second best deck in the game, running that Prince Renathal. There are a couple of variants of Beast Hunter around. I'm still featuring this one. This is the same I featured last week. This is the one that runs Ambassador Phelan. I still love Ambassador Phelan, such a fun card. But there are also lists that cut Ambassador Phelan, and they seem to be doing pretty well. On the other hand, they also like cut Stonepike Battle Rams, which seems to be a mistake, so maybe there is an even better list that would cut the Phelan, but keep the Battle Rams, something like that. Maybe that would work. Either way, Beast Hunter, very strong deck. The second best deck in the game. And the only deck ahead of Beast Hunter is Quest Hunter. Quest Hunter is the best deck in the game. Prince Renathal gives it just enough health, it's able to get through its quest line, it's able to start its machine gun, and then it just wins games. This deck has so many good matchups, big Spell Mages, Fel Demon Hunters, all rogue decks, all Shaman variants. It's just pow. And it has very few weaknesses as well. Mech Paladin is the premium counter to Quest Hunter, although, well, technically Celestial Druid is the premium counter to Quest Hunter. Celestial Druid, it's like 80-20 or something in favor of the Druid. But Celestial Druid only has two good matchups, this one and Presto Druid, so I really wouldn't recommend playing Celestial Druid anyway. Mech Paladin is already clearly favored, so that's the main option to go for if you want to counter Quest Hunters, or you might just join Quest Hunters. There is still evolution going on with this archetype. This version of this, for example, introduces Ancient Krakenbanes and Conchi's Call, and yeah, the deck looks pretty good. So that is the current status of our Prince Renathal meta, and the 12 best decks to climb all the way to Legend. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please click the like button, subscribe to my channel, and check out my Twitch channel.